Can you tell me a little bit about the inception of the idea?
The inception of the idea for the script, it was, there were a couple characters that I had been working with and writing other writings that I've had, especially Christian, but they're really, I think there was no real family stuff until just the summer of 2011 when I was just like, I gotta write something, and then for some reason it's sort of like the character of Christian and then surrounded by some like dramatic family events kind of just came together. Within like 2 months the script was done.
What's your process for doing something like that? Does it just come out of you, or is it more of like a game of note cards with ideas that you're piecing together?
No, I don't do it like that. I usually have to like immerse myself in it for a couple weeks and do nothing else and be like a hermit, and because I usually write really bad stuff first for like a week or something, so I have to get it all out of my system, and then by like the second week I start figuring things out. But I don't piece it together on a board or anything. I go from beginning to end.
Is there anything really important to the hermit process, like something you need to have in the room with you, or I don't know, a drink or anything?
I drink Coca-Cola a lot when I do that, which I really shouldn't do because I stopped drinking Coke. I drank too much Coke for a long time. Coke problem. Maybe it translated into the movie.
See what you did there?
And anything else? I mean, sometimes I'm just like on my bed. It's bad because sometimes I just don't leave my apartment for, you know, days at a time in New York City, which is not a good thing to do. But I'm not one of those writers that can go out and, you know, sit in a cafe or a bar with my laptop. And I just wouldn't like the look of that. But B, I don't like the external inputs there. Like I need to sort of concentrate. It's a lot of self-loathing involved.
And how about just being a first-time feature filmmaker? Because I know you have some shorts and they played in festivals, but that's a pretty huge leap to go into the feature realm. So what was it about this that made you say, this is the one I'm going to do it with?
It was that the short Satan Since 2003 that was at Sundance and then South by Southwest, and I had been putting off writing a feature for so long, and once I went to those festivals and it was like, okay, like I can at least get these festivals to look at something that I make, and I just, you know, it's been too long just sitting around trying to wait for the perfect script. I was just like, I'm just going to write something, I'm going to do my best, and then I'm going to shoot it. Because I had a lot of scripts that I had started and that I had, you know, kind of put aside and then picked back up over the years, but never really decided that it was perfect enough to shoot. So I just said, I'm just going to write something that's going to be good enough to shoot, and I'm going to shoot it this year. And that's, yeah, and then we did it.
And how did you two come together? Because, like, I'm not sure where this falls in line with girls, but you get something like that, and I'm sure you're getting lots of material. So what was it that about this script that really spoke to you?
Well, this was before. Me and Carlos were friends already. And I'm using what only you said, but that I did a play, and which I invited Carlos to anyway because he was a friend, and I guess he liked me enough in the play to want to do a film with me, and then so he just asked me to do it, and then I said yes. Well, after I read it,
he had this
I said
one, yes. I don't know if it was 10 minutes, I don't know how long, it seemed like a very large chunk of time to be just on stage. At the beginning of the second act,
8
it's
to
just
10 minutes.
Yeah,
10 minutes of
just him on stage by himself, and this is a play that had, you know, major stars, Ben Stiller, who else was in it?
Edie Falco.
These were like, you know, people that have been on Broadway and stuff. But there's this 10-minute start to the second act where he's just on stage, and it captivated the whole audience like no other part of the play did. I mean, for me at least. No offense to anybody else, but also and what I got most out of that was that it was mostly in the silences that were like, that made the audience react. Like his silences made the audience laugh, or like one look that he would give. It wasn't necessarily the monologue, because he did have a monologue, but it was, and there's a lot of that in the script, where this script needed to be carried off by somebody who people just want to look at in the silences, and gives off, like emotes a lot of stuff between the lines, because there's a lot of, and if you watch the movie, there's a lot of just, you know, kind of him not
the first like
anything.
20 minutes, really, yeah. There's really not much.
Yeah, you don't really say
dialogue.
anything. You're just looking at him, but you're still sort of getting a lot of what his life is about. And so after that play, I was like, yeah, I really want him to do it. So I wrote a couple things differently to sort of try to make it match him a little bit, and then offered it to him, and he said yes. And then we built the cast around that with our casting director, Susan Shopmaker.
And a lot of the cast has a theater background, right?
Yeah, Chris McCann, who plays the dad, is, I think, fully theater, right?
He does a lot. Yeah, that's his main kind of go-to.
And Emily's now doing a play. She's plays the ex-girlfriend, and she's in a play.
Gabby and Dan both done a lot of theater too.
Yeah.
How about from your perspective? Does having that kind of training help you on screen too?
Not really. No, it's not. They're pretty different animals. Yeah.
How about throwing TV into the mix too? Because like you've got so many different mediums and so many different schedulings and way of working. Is there one that you feel most comfortable with?
I think it's film. I mean, I go through kind of moods with stuff. With I think what I prefer doing. I think probably TV is the hardest, and yeah, I think I feel most comfortable in film and theater.
Regardless of where you're performing or the material you have, is there anything with your preparation process before hitting a set that stays the same? Something you like to do?
No, I think it changes every job. I think every job you kind of have to go at it a different way. And for this one specifically, me and Carlos would meet and just kind of talk about the script. But I thought it was kind of important to wait to meet all the other actors and kind of develop it from there, because it is a family drama, and it's hard to have preparation until you kind of see their faces and get to know who they are. So I think a lot of the preparation happened while we were working.
So taking it from there, what kind of actor's director are you? Do you like to rehearse or just give a lot of notes in between takes?
I'd probably think that I like to rehearse, but we just didn't do it, and so I didn't feel that it was necessary after a while. After we did the first few scenes and we hadn't rehearsed, we would just the day of kind of maybe go over it a couple times while they were setting up the lights and stuff. And I think that was enough, because otherwise it gets a little just stale if they do it, 50 times in one day. And I think, like from what I do from like documentary stuff, I know that I'm even afraid to ask people to do something, over, because then it's never as real as it is the first time. So we usually try to either tape the rehearsals, like shoot the rehearsals, or kind of like maybe talk about it beforehand and maybe say the lines, but not really actually act until we were until we were like really shooting.
Do you think having worked on True Life affects the way you direct now?
I think so, a lot, in a lot of the ways that I like. I mean, the camera, I like to do a lot of handheld, and I like to do it myself sometimes. So that was a big thing that Tom Richmond did for us, our DP. He sort of lit a lot from above and kind of 360, so we didn't have to do different lighting setups. The camera could roam a lot, which I was used to. And then he also took the same thing. He'd pick up the camera, and then he would just also kind of roam and see what he could find. I think like that's sort of sometimes the best shots that you get is when the camera doesn't really know who's going to say what and isn't really necessarily following the next person speaking, but just kind of flowing in a way that maybe in the end looks natural. And that's the good thing about shooting the way we did. We could also shoot a lot and shoot several different times every scene. So. Then when you have a lot to edit with. But as far as True Life goes, the shooting style I think is kind of documentary-ish, and then I think also when I was shooting documentary stuff, you kind of do a lot of sitting around and waiting for something sort of significant, so something that is going to be a moment that you want to capture, and so you're waiting for them to speak a certain way, you're waiting for something and that sort of helped me to just hone in on, I guess, like the way people speak maybe, and try to make the script at least the most sort of believable, the most kind of naturalistic that I could. I didn't do that all, by the way. So a lot of that was in the edit. We edited some of the stuff that I wrote that wasn't really a kind of naturalistic, but we kind of shaved it down to I think its most naturalistic state, trying to make it seem like a real family and real events.
That's one of my favorite parts about a movie like this is how real it feels, and it's not necessarily going straight towards some grand, I don't know, high concept or big finale even. How do you go about managing that? Like in terms of audience expectations too, because I found it really interesting where you leave this movie off.
Yeah, that was sort of the audience expectation. I didn't. Let's see, what I'm trying to say. I wasn't playing for. I didn't necessarily mean it to be the anti-movie kind of thing, like climax and like have it go a totally different way than people think it did. But a lot of people have said that, like, oh, I thought it was going to go one way, but then it didn't. But it's kind of a nice surprise because I didn't want to kind of overbear the audience with like the expectation of this is going to happen because this happened beforehand. So I think the movie, especially the way that it ends, it's just more, I think, of a natural kind of just like ending as opposed to this like third act climax that everybody's sort of waiting for.
Yeah.
How do you feel about where your character, like, how do you personally feel about where your character is left and, like, the decision that he makes? Were you, like, rooting for him in that trajectory?
Yeah, you know, I mean, the whole movie is really about him and, well, everyone really in the movie kind of work just, it feels like just working towards being a better person, you know? So, I mean, it doesn't, at least I feel, it doesn't really end with him, like, making that leap completely. It kind of ends in just a few small steps that he's taking towards something, you know? And, I mean, and it's hard to describe because I'm also not a believer in, like the movie is the movie, and there's not really a life after the movie, you know? I mean, you know, and I think sometimes people wonder, like, well, what's Christian gonna do next, you know? And it's hard to say because the movie just ends and that's the end of the movie. So there is no next. But you know, I think the movie is a lot about people working towards being better people, and at least at the end, he does. You kind of see him kind of start to take his first, I guess, baby steps towards a better life.
Another thing that I really respect here is that it takes on a very real form with like a slice of life mentality, which also means that you're not drowning an audience in family exposition and history. So how is it managing giving people what they need to understand everyone and have fully realized characters while also making it feel real and not drowning people in that respect?
I guess that's just comes from like the goal of the film. For me, it was just I just wanted to make a movie to entertain, basically, or just like people want to watch or how do you say? They are
Fed?
No, not fed, but like engaged. They're engaged for an hour and a half, and that, you know, I think is the point of like the cinema that I like to watch anyway. I'm not really I don't necessarily go out to look for movies that make me feel like I want to become a better person or make me want to go, you know, save the world or anything. So that said, I kind of tried to keep the melodrama to a minimum. I mean, I understand that there are some dramatic themes in here, but the way that they interact about them they're sort of like the backdrop, and the real movie is about just their interactions and like their interactions in the moment about it, not necessarily, you know, what's going to happen 10 years from now or what did happen 10 years from now. It's what's happening right now in the way that they're speaking, and a lot of it was just some of the things that I was maybe watching, like just verbal styles.
I think everyone was also on the same page. Like once everyone kind of got together up there and then kind of realized what we were doing and the kind of film that we were trying to make, I think it became about everyone being on the same page with that mentality and not, you know, not putting too much pressure on exposition when you're having scenes with people or feel like you need to, you know, fill it with this dialogue so that the audience has this information. You know, I think you know, you can get a lot out of a relationship just on how they're talking to each other, not necessarily what they're saying. You know, just their rapport.
For instance, Jacinta, who plays the little girl, she was her first time acting, and so at the very beginning, I think we only had to tell her this like once, because at the very beginning, I think she felt like it was just something that you needed to act, when in reality, like what we wanted was to craft the scene in a way that it wasn't acting, for at least not, you know, for her. It was just like her talking to him, you know, give them, you know, like this is what's going on in the scene and these are the lines, and, you know, kind of give her the safety to just kind of be herself and not act as like what she considered to be like, you know, like movie acting, which is sort of I think what comes off in the movie is like people sort of seem like real real people, hopefully.
What are your hopes from here? I know you're playing in Sarasota next, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're having a screening in Sarasota, and probably do some other, I'm not sure, we will probably do some sort of international premiere. And then from here on out, I don't know, I'm working on another script. Maybe I'll ask him to do it.
We'll see.
And I don't know, what are you doing?
I don't know. Was that? I don't think that was a question, man.
What was the
A
question?
little bit. It was a little more directed towards Burma specifically,
Towards
but that
Burma.
was my follow-up
But I'm
question.
not
So
really
you're a
sure
step ahead.
what Burma's. I mean, Burma. We hope to. What we. I don't know.
I think. I mean, we left South by pretty happy. You know,
Yeah.
I think people saw it and people, responded to it, and
I think that the award really did, very grateful for them, because it sort of, there was one article that said that it was, Burma was the kind of movie that you sort of see in festivals, and you can see some movies like it, but the award really sort of elevated to this other level where some people are going to now see it that wouldn't have seen it otherwise. And
it helps.
Sort of, it'll
It helps.
widen the audience and hopefully kind of help it for life beyond South by.
Do you think there's an ideal format of distribution for something like this? Because now with VOD and those types of releases, it just opens so many doors. Do you think that might be an appropriate route for this?
I think that's an appropriate route for any movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think any movie, no matter what it is, should be seen in a theater and in a cinema, and not on a laptop.
Yeah. So I know nothing about distribution, but I'd love to see it in a, some little art cinema, or no, you know what? Freaking.
Fuck it, dude.
What are they called? I don't even know.
Cineplex.
Yeah, Regal or whoever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know nothing about distribution. I'm sorry. So I would just like to see people. I'd like to have people see it, and I think
Theater near you.
in a theater near you.